I watched finally Avengers Endgame, and I think as a movie, it was better in certain aspects, at least, than the Infinity Wars. Yes, sure, this is the conclusion of the saga of the Avengers, I guess, but also um, it incorporated a lot of elements. In terms of action, for example, by the way, there will be spoilers, so there are spoilers coming. Okay. In terms of action, this was towards the end. There was a lot, but until that time, and throughout the basically movie, it was below Infinity Wars. Infinity Wars had several encounters, like other fights um, between the fighters of Thanos and other Avengers and such. And there were different encounters where they were trying to um, go against Thanos and such, and there was big fight in the Infinity Wars. There is one very big fight at the end, but until then, um, there is some Captain America to Captain America action because there's time travel. Yeah, I will mention it. In terms of action, however, I would say this wasn't a better movie. In terms of special effects and such, I again don't believe this was better than Infinity Wars. I think even Infinity Wars scientific effects or the CGI kind of, to my eye, were more realistic, maybe a notch better. Um, though in terms of music, this was quite good. And in terms of like drama or the tragedy part, even though you might say the first one was quite tragic, this was way more emotional though. There was, you might say, what are you talking about? 50% of everything got destroyed. Isn't it very emotional? Yes and no. Yes, there are suddenly a lot of losses, but those losses, they didn't each have their moments, right? I mean, with the Spider-Man, I think the Spider-Man says something like, I feel bad or something, and then dies, but most people that just look and then just disappeared in the Infinity Wars. Here, um, they are going back in time and there are a couple of losses. So Natasha or the Black Widow basically sacrifices herself, and towards the end or at the end basically there's a big sacrifice. Tony Stark sacrifices himself. um, each of them struck the heart a lot actually. um, yeah, so those were quite emotional. There were other emotional parts, which, however, again, it wasn't action. So, like Tony Stark meets his father. It's the year 1970, I think, before he's born yet, but his actual mother is pregnant to him. And there's a long conversation going on with that. Or Thor meets his mother on the day his mother is going to die. Um, those were very personal moments. So with those moments, you get attached to these characters. On the other hand, those were just some emotional moments. They weren't necessary for the mainstream story of the movie. It's just uh, it was like a closure for them in a sense, being able to say goodbye to their loved ones. His father for Tony Stark and his mother for Thor. Um, but yeah, were they really necessary for the movie, or were they just inserted there to have a better impact of the movie, which it impacted way more. Thor, he gained weight, like he was like almost, he wasn't entirely obese, I think, but very overweight. Boundary maybe. I don't know his body mass index. Uh, that felt weird, but at the same time he got like emotional. He has like panic attack and such. So by having that, experiencing that weak side, um, he became more of a relatable person. Previously, he was just that ripped guy where every female and some males would fall in love with him. Um, and now he became a person uh, who, like one of us. And that's what happens at the end as well. So he like abandons the throne, says that to the Valkyrie, I forgot her name, says that yeah, they have their king, so you are the queen. I mean, calls it king, but you are now their leader, and I'm gonna hang out with these Guardians guys. So yeah, and if they make another Guardians of the Galaxy, then chances are Thor is going to be with them. That was fun. And if it is for that, that encounter with Mother, if it is to add to that character who we might see again in the future, I can see that. But for the movie, it was more one of those emotional encounters. Um, Time travel. So everybody foresaw that, especially after Ant-Man and the Wasp, which aired after Infinity Wars, and the timeline, however, of that movie when it ends, it actually ends at the end of the Infinity War. Where half of people disappear, and yeah, so Ant-Man is trapped in the quantum realm. So it was obvious that quantum realm, where time is relative and whatnot, is going to take place. The way they take on the time travel thing is though saying that changing the past does not change the future, which had always been the theme for almost every time travel movie. And in fact, they are naming those movies like Back to the Future. Are you saying that Back to the Future is now not true and such? And they're saying yeah and such. So yeah, I mean they are introducing some fantasy way to a time travel by uh, messing with or basically degrading the other time travel fantasies. It's a bit of a cheap move, to be honest. That was whenever people expected, and I expected, okay, there will be time travel. That's how they are going to bring all these people back. I said, yeah, I mean, why not just continue? Why not just move on, right? With whatever you are left and beat Thanos. But Thanos apparently uses the stones again, and he's now weak, and they just kill him in their timeline. But what happens is when they go back, the several years ago, Thanos learns about it, and then he finds a way to travel to their time, and that's happening now at the third part of the movie, and that's where the big encounter is. But then again, this is a kind of a multiverse, I think, idea, right? In fact, Spider-Man or Spider-Verse, what was it called? Spider-Man's Step into the Spider-Verse or something like that. It's a famous animation. Kind of talks about it. So I think Marvel is gonna go that route and saying that okay, well, there's time travel because like they with Tony Stark they make a machine. Actually, there's another machine in the bus of the Ant-Man. When he comes back, he goes through that machine again, and then both of them are destroyed, and they can make another one. Now they need something supposedly called Pym particle in order to get the Pym particle. In fact, that's the reason why they are going to 1970 along with collecting the stones. Yeah, but I'm pretty sure that something that had been done in 1970 can be done with way better technology, right? It's not like, I mean, I don't, yeah, it can be done. So this opens a can of worms, meaning that, uh, okay, you defeated this, you killed that, adventure concludes, or not, because there is now travel. So you can now pull that card out of nowhere and yeah, bring everybody back if whenever you want, however you want. And that's why when they defeat Thanos, eventually, in fact, they still cannot defeat Thanos with regular fight. They still defeat it with the rings when Tony Stark this time snaps his fingers and which kills him. Uh, wow, I mean now there is even Captain Marvel, but Captain Marvel is actually probably gonna beat Thanos, but Thanos uses a stone to punch her because otherwise she's actually OP. And because she's OP, she's like dealing with other, parts of the universe. That was kind of a, yeah, again, kind of a very average reason for her not to show up earlier and not for Nick Fury not to call her earlier, right? I mean, the world was gonna be destroyed a couple of times at least. And lastly, what about Vision, right? He was a guy, a machine, but like he's not human, so he's not brought back and such, and he's like forgotten. I wish they at least put a portrait of Vision and Black Widow at the funeral of Tony Stark at the end. So overall, I think it's a good movie. It's maybe a better movie, as I said, but it's not than the Infinity Wars and maybe the best Avengers. Yeah, I think they concluded very well with also Captain America going back and finally living a life with his loved one. Um, but I hope they are not going to mute time travel stuff way more. I have one more movie to watch, which is the latest Spider-Man, and apparently that's the epilogue. That's where the everything is actually ending, kind of. So I wonder now how they are going to tie the ending of the Endgame to the start of the new Spider-Man movie. I'll see. But I recommend, if you haven't watched the Endgame, I'm sure you have watched it. I recommend you watch it soon, after watching all the other movies, of course.